Well, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all here tonight. This is the 7th in our Moving Forward Forum series. We try each quarter, New Pioneers tries each quarter, to present for the community a forum composed of local people talking about some aspect of building a sustainable rural community. So tonight, we have a very interesting topic, and that is the role of alternative energy sources in building a sustainable rural community. Most of you are probably aware that there has been a lot of conversation in the last few months about a big pipeline that's been proposed to run right through the center of Kentucky, and in particular right through the center of our Tri-County area. It's a 24-inch high-pressure, high-volume pipeline that people want to run through, and it's connected with using fossil fuels as energy sources, and it's connected with expanding the infrastructure for using fossil fuels as energy sources. And we like to believe that that's not the only choice that we have as people in this country. There are other options. And in fact, we have people right here in our own community who are already using other options. Options that are called renewable energy sources, ways of heating and cooling their homes which do not rely on the burning of fossil fuels. And so we thought it'd be really interesting to get these three very fine, wonderful members of our community to talk with us tonight about what they're doing in their own homes and why they're doing it and how it's working out for them. So we have Sue Billings, who many of the people in the community know because she was a veterinarian here for years, and her husband Phil still is. And they have installed solar energy on their home. And then Clay Stevens, who many of you know from his activities as pastor of the local Presbyterian Church. Excuse me. Also, Clay is very active in many modes of the community. And Clay has installed a hydronic wood furnace system in his home. And he's going to talk to us about how that works and why he did that. And finally, Wesley Smith is going to talk to us about why he and his wife Abby use geothermal energy sources to heat and cool their home. So they're each going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll invite them into a conversation among the three of them for about 20 minutes, and then we'll invite all of you to participate in the conversation with your comments and questions and ideas and suggestions. So that's kind of how we do our forums, and we think this one's going to be really interesting. So welcome to all three of you. Thanks very much for giving the time to be here and helping the rest of our community understand that we do have some other options. So Sue, would you like to begin for us?
I will. And I kind of made a few notes as to why Phil and I chose to go solar. The first reason really, and probably the most paramount, is our respect and good stewardship for the earth that God gave us. That was kind of the driving force that had us looking into alternative energy sources. Many years ago, when I was at the University of Kentucky in agriculture, I had a professor who convinced me that the day would come when the world would not be able to provide enough food for all of its inhabitants. And I think we seem to be getting closer to that day with our expanding populations, the misuse of our land, and our water resources that are threatened. And as a veterinarian, we respect all animals, humans, insects. You know, we realize that everyone plays a part in the world we live in, and we're saddened every time there's a species lost. So that was, and humans destroy the habitats, and when they destroy habitats for animals and insects, we're also destroying the earth that sustains the life that we choose to live. So we have to look at the big picture. And then our other desire was that our grandchildren and yours would enjoy the clean water, clear skies, and the abundance of food that we enjoyed growing up in the mid-20th century. So, you know, we have wonderful memories of our childhood, and we want our grandchildren's children to be able to have those same memories. The growing population with the various lifestyles and practices that people have, they're now stressing the availability and purity of our water and the quality of the air we breathe and our ability to provide food. So we started looking at renewable energy sources that would reduce the need for using energy sources that contribute to pollution and destruction of the earth that we live on. That was kind of why we wanted to try something else. And we considered wind, we looked at wind, but solar seemed to be the most feasible for our situation, the state we live in and where we live. And we probably spent at least 10 years talking about it and talking to other people and trying to find out information. We're slow to make decisions sometimes. But we finally made the giant step and began to give serious consideration to how many more years would we live on our farm on Booker Road to make this kind of investment once we kind of began to get ballpark figures of what it would cost. And we considered, you know, how long it would take to maybe regain at least the base investment. But at the end, we decided that the contribution that we would make on a personal level, it would make us feel good to know that we were using something that was renewable and that would make the investment worth it, whether we live long enough to break even or not. So that's, and we kind of decided we'd live at the farm until we couldn't get around anymore. So we hope that's a few more years. So then the next big decision is finding the right installer. And you can go on the internet and you can get quotes, and they can come from California and Texas and people you don't know. And we did that. We got a few quotes, and they were all kind of ballpark the same, because they will give you a quote if you will provide your monthly kilowatt usage for the previous 12 months, if you will tell them what kind of roof you have, and if you tell them how many shade trees you have around your home, and how your house sits, what direction it faces, and you know, that type of thing. So you can kind of get a ballpark figure. But we thought local would be better. We like to know who we're dealing with. We like living in a small community, and you like to be able to go back and find the person if you need to talk to them again. So we had a friend who we'd known for a long, long time, and they were putting in a partial solar system. And they invited Phil to come out and watch the guy work and talk to him while he's up on their roof, and he did. And so he came up maybe the very next day or the next week and looked at our situation and gave us an estimate and gave us information on how it really works and the other options there are with solar. Once you hook up, you can have solar renewable energy credits that you can sell to, you have to sell them in other states because Kentucky doesn't have a system to allow you to sell them, but they help reimburse your expense. You're actually, I think it's basically big business that's buying them to offset their carbon, that they're producing too much carbon, and they buy people who are doing it right, so they buy your credits. So, and it does help, I will tell you that. So in late 2010, if I'm going too long, kick me. Okay.
You have about 4 more minutes.
Okay. In late 2010, we signed the contract, took the big bite, and we got all the stuff delivered, and it got delivered in November and then sat on our back porch till February because that was a cold, hard winter, and we actually had snow, and they couldn't get up on the roof. But we got the system in place, working by March of 2011. By June of 2011, The only KU bill we have paid since then is the basic service fee they charge you to allow you to use their grid system. We have a system that's 33 solar panels, grid tied, and we had to change they had to change the meter. So what our panels generate goes straight onto the grid, and then we get back. And our utility bill shows us how much we sent onto the grid and how much we used. And then we have, at this point, we have over 5,000 kilowatt hours in the bank, so to speak, that are to our credit that we have to use. So we are, our installer took care of everything, working with the utility company. You have to have an electrician to get your electric service connected into the inverter. It really doesn't take very long to get all this put on your house, and we've been totally satisfied. We've, as I say, have not had to pay. We do not heat with electric. I will clarify that. We do use propane, but all of our other uses in the house are electric, and air conditioning, dehumidifier in the summer. We've not had to pay basically an electric bill since May of 2011.
Wow.
Except for it's like $5 to $6. It varies from month to month, a little service fee you have to pay. Our system has generated over 28,000 kilowatt hours since March of 2011, and it has saved, saved, where did I put that in here somewhere? 47,310 pounds of carbon dioxide that would have been put into the atmosphere for that amount of energy. So our meter on the back of the house that goes with the solar system tells you every day how many kilowatt hours your system is collecting, the total amount it's collected since it's been in service, and how many pounds of CO2 you've saved. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Sue.
Wow.
That's very interesting. Clay, how about
I think
your
Wesley would like to
hydronic
go
wood furnace?
follow that. I mean, good night. Wesley and I were just chatting before this began, and both of the other panelists here have lots of technical information, and I have none. And he said, where's your information? I said, if you can light a fire, you can run a hydronic wood furnace. I appreciate, Sue, where you're coming from with the ideology and the worldview issues, and I like that. Although I'm a pastor, I come at it from a much more pragmatic perspective. I think it was the winter of 2008, January of 2008, when we had a power outage. I might be wrong on my date by year, but we went 8 days without electricity, and we had just recently moved into a house with 40 acres, and about day 3 of living in our basement with no heat, just keeping ourselves warm with lots of blankets on mattresses in the basement floor, I looked outside and had a marvelous revelation. I said, there are trees on this property. And the other great insight I had was that the house that we were living in didn't have a fireplace. And we are all electric. And so that was my big aha moment, was that how incredibly dependent our family and our lifestyle was upon electricity. And wasn't sure what to do with it from that point forward, but I know that I spent time down at Joe Pat Hayden's hardware store waiting in line with several other residents of our county for a gas generator. And I was simply wanting a gas generator just to return some normalcy to our existence. Well, these guys were down there waiting in line so that they could watch football, and all. Heat was the least of their worries because they all had fire and propane and all this stuff. And so, from that point forward, I started to do research. And it took about a year of talking and trying to convince my wife that one of these outdoor wood furnaces would be a good application for us. And like I said, we had lived on the property for about a year before, or 2 years before we had our installation done. Our installation was finally complete in 2010. And at that time, there were credits from the federal government and the state government for installation of these alternative EPA-approved heating devices. Hydronic wood furnace being one of the applications. Solar, obviously, being one. Geothermal, and so did the research, and there are several manufacturers of these outdoor wood furnaces. My wife would not consent to having wood and the dirt that we're not the world's cleanest folks, but she just didn't want the added burden of that in the house. And so since we didn't have a chimney, we weren't going to retrofit the house that way. And so the outside wood burning application was best for us. The technology involved is very simple. It works on very much like the geothermal would work. It's all on heat exchange. And so the unit is you'll see them in the backyards of farmhouses throughout Washington County. They've been in our county, I know, over 30 years. Hardy being one of the first stoves that would have made its presence felt here. Those are manufactured in Mississippi, and they're stainless steel, and they're very attractive, simple little units. Since that time, they've got we have friends that have the central boiler wood burning systems, and they're kind of the Cadillac of the thing. I don't have a central boiler. We have something called a Legend wood stove, and they're manufactured in North Carolina. I've talked to the fabricator, and I call him. We know each other on first name basis. But the system's very simple. It consists of a firebox surrounded by a water jacket. You'll often see a central chimney on that. What allowed my system to be EPA approved for tax credit purposes was that it was a double pass-through or a double burn system, so it burns a little more cleanly. There happens to be an environmentally sound reason for burning wood. It's considered, since it's biomass, it's considered carbon neutral. So the carbon dioxide that the trees took up, you're just releasing back into the atmosphere. And so it's a very sustainable way to produce heat. The water jacket is hooked. You hook this outside unit to your house through a means of pumping water. So water stays in a closed loop. And the water travels to the house, and inside your existing ductwork, there will look like something that very much resembles a car radiator. And the water will just pass through that, and it travels back to the furnace, and it's on a continuous pump that burns about the amount of electricity of a 40-watt bulb. So that's about the electrical. Now, the HVAC system is still in place. The thermostats in the house are still in place, and so our house was cool. When we moved in, the electric heat was really not a satisfactory nor an economical way to heat our house. We're up on top of a hill. We have wood floors. My wife likes things warm, and so she was never satisfied. But the first winter that we had the hydronic furnace up and running, she was toasty. In fact, so you can run the temperature in the house literally to 100 degrees. It doesn't cost any more to do that than to keep it set at 68 or 65. And so it's just a matter of how much hustling you want to do to keep the wood in the furnace. But it's a simple technology, and I liked it for that reason as I began to research it. One of the aspects of the furnace for our application that I like is that it got me out in my woods more. And it got me paying attention to my land. So there were stewardship issues came into play after the purchase of the furnace, and so getting out with a chainsaw and making trails and cutting up the land where we're living had been timbered about 10 years before we moved in, and the valuable timber had been removed, and the laps of the trees or the tops of the trees had just been left. And so I just proceeded to go in and start using that as fuel source. And lo and behold, after a couple of years, we had foresters come out and they approved our property as a certified tree farm. So it's had a benefit in that respect environmentally for us and allowed us to be in the tree farm system, which I never would have endeavored probably to do had we not gone through the ice storm, which got me thinking about the alternative heating. And then, lastly, it provides a way of nutrient cycling because you gather the ash out of that firebox, and Mr. Steve Smith is here, who knows a lot about gardening, and I'll take that ash and I'll put it on the garden. And it's a nice free source of lime and calcium, potassium, and magnesium. So anyway, I love my system. I could be a salesman for it. So I'd love to answer any questions. But of the three, what's nice about our system is that it would work as a nice pony system with solar. And it could even work with geothermal, although it's not quite as necessary with the geothermal application. So,
Thank you, Clay. We're glad you had that ice storm.
That's right.
I'm Wesley Smith. My wife Abby and I, we built a new home approximately 4 years ago, and we chose a water furnace geothermal system. At the time, this is kind of double-sided for me as well because I actually sell this equipment too, so I'm going to promote it as well. But I guess our number one reason would have been the renewable clean energy that does not involve any combustion, which fossil fuels are known for in producing, carbon monoxide, natural gas or propane. But first, I'd like to get into kind of explaining the way a geothermal system actually works. There's been a lot of theories you hear thrown around throughout the years, and it is true that our geo loops typically are anywhere from 180 feet to 300 feet deep. Those are always drilled typically with a 4-inch bore hole. The water that we do that comes back out of the ground is typically 55 degrees, and a lot of people assume that you pass that through a coil similar to Clay's, and that's how you cool your house. But the actual theory of it is that 55 degree water, the geothermal systems still use Freon. And that's a term everybody's familiar with, especially if you've had to purchase it before because it's so expensive. But in that, I have a picture here of it's an outdoor unit, and this diagram shows this coil. It's a condenser coil that passes, say on a 95 degree day, you're bringing air through this coil, and then on top of everybody's air conditioner, you notice the air coming out of the top being very warm. We're condensing that refrigerant on a typical system on a 95 degree day with 95 degree air. Geothermal, we have a tubular, it's called a coaxial heat exchanger, or a tube within a tube. So we'll take that Freon, circulate it in the outer jacket with 55 degree water. So geothermal unit is typically always operating at a 55 degree for, say, outdoor temperature versus conventional heating and air system in the heating mode could operate at 0 degrees or up to 100 degrees. So there's a real big temperature swing there. Another term that a lot of people are probably familiar with are Seer ratings. People always want to say, well, I have a 13 Seer or a 16 Seer. The Seer, the S in that is seasonal. That's seasonal energy efficiency ratio. So if you have a 16 Seer, geothermal is not rated in Seers but EER because there's nothing seasonal about that particular. We're always pulling our energy from the earth at a constant 55 degrees. So I have a study that I kind of put together for tonight, and it bases a 16 Seer air conditioner versus a 30 EER air conditioner in geothermal. I'll get to that in just a little bit. I just, like I said, put together 10 reasons why we chose it, and a study completed by the National Heating and Cooling Association shows an average life of a geothermal unit of 22 to 24 years. Being in the field every day, I can agree to that. That is typical. A conventional air conditioner or heat pump is typically 14 years. So you have 8 to 10 more years of life typically out of a geothermal unit. Also available tax credits. Now there's a federal credit available of 30%. That's if your house calls for a $20,000 system, that 30% credit, is equal to $6,000 that comes off of the lump sum of that total bid price for that unit. So the 30% tax credit is available to 2017, but there's always state and local co-ops, Salt River, that will typically offer rebates as well. So there's a lot of rebates that can be taken advantage of to really decrease the initial cost. Geothermal units are also capable of generating approximately 40% of the hot water needs based on a 4-family household. And that, once again, is through the transfer of your Freon and your domestic hot water. And to further explain that conventional system is discharging that heat. So once it discharges outside, it's lost. Geothermal takes that heat and runs it through a coaxial heat exchanger, a tube within a tube, with your domestic water, and we can increase that. If it were coming in at 55 degrees in the house, we can boost that temperature by almost 30 degrees. So instead of putting 55 degree water in your hot water heater, we're putting it in at 85. So that's another reason where it's so renewable that there's nothing lost in geothermal. We capture every aspect of energy or kilowatts or BTUs. We can put it into something in that system. Another reason water furnace or geothermal systems offer, it's called dual capacity units. So if you purchased a 4-ton unit, all based on the thermostat, for instance, at your house and your air conditioning at 8 a.m. in the morning, your heat load on your house is not as great as it will be at 5 p.m. when it's 100 degrees and the sun's beaming down on that house. So that thermostat senses it. It brings that unit on in first stage, which is actually 50% of its capacity. So a 4-ton unit would be a 2-ton. So it draws half the current, half the electricity, runs a little bit longer to get the humidity, moisture out of the air, makes you in turn feel comfortable and cooler. So, but when the need for 4 tons is there, say at 5 p.m., that thermostat will sense that, bring that unit on at full capacity, where your conventional units are basically all or none, which is a huge energy savings. Another option are variable speed, and that's your indoor fan motor. We've probably all been in houses where it sounds like a jet engine running. Geothermal systems typically will be set up with a variable speed fan that offers basically 12 speeds. It's great in 2-story homes that have long runs of ductwork. You can increase that so that your vents don't feel, for instance, lazy. The air coming out is lazy. It's, you get a good strong airflow or velocity of air, but also you can tone that down to where it doesn't sound like an airplane running in the basement. It also offers with multiple zones that you can pick and choose. For instance, in our home, we have our first floor on a thermostat, and then we have our basement on a thermostat. So when our need of the basement and air conditioning basically doesn't run whatsoever, so we just circulate air down there to keep mold or moisture or anything to where it needs to be. That's a huge energy savings, because there's no sense in running that particular, cooling that basement, dumping more cold air into it. That's a waste of energy again. With geothermal, there's no noisy outdoor unit sitting beside your patio or bedroom window. A lot of houses we go into, there's a big debate if a homeowner doesn't want to set that unit beside their bedroom or beside their patio. You can't hear, you can't think. So with geothermal, we don't have to have that 95-degree air transfer. We're doing it with water, so that outdoor unit's not needed. We package it all in one system, and it's located in your basement, your crawl space, wherever your house may need it. With geothermal units, they typically offer a 10-year warranty on their parts, their compressor, and on their labor. Most conventional systems offer 10 years parts and compressor, but only a 2-year labor warranty. So for 8 more years, that system's covered under a labor warranty. And to sum it up, I did a operating cost, and this is based on a 1,800 to 2,200 square foot home with a 4-ton system. The geothermal, this is a dual capacity once again. Our hot water temperature settings are 130 degrees. This home is based on 4 users of hot water. Our heating is 245 days, calendar days at 16.3 hours per day. The cooling is 120 days at 12 hours per day. The total heating, cooling, and hot water for this size home is $1,293. That's based off of a Geothermal 5. It's a dual capacity 4-ton unit. These prices are on a 10 cents per kilowatt. If you call your power company, they're probably going to, I don't know if you know, Sue, exactly what KU's charging for their kilowatts. I would assume probably 6 or 7 cents. We took our whole bill, and on a bill, if you call them, they're going to tell you probably 8.5 to 9. But as you all know, there's an EPA charge on there, a fuel cost adjustment. That's something that everybody freaks out about when they see it, because it's typically pretty high. But if you take your kilowatts, divide that by that total bill, that'll let you know what you're paying exactly per kilowatt. This house, we based it off of 10 cents. That's what Salt River Electric is at this point. And we based it off of a 90% efficient gas furnace at $2 per gallon propane cost. I've recently heard numbers from $1.89 to $2.49, so $2 is a very conservative number. So let's compare that at $1,293 with geothermal versus the conventional 16 Seer air conditioner, and the 90% furnace is $3,369 annual. So a 16 Seer system costs $10,000 to install. A geothermal system comparable to that is $20,000. Wow, that's double the cost. Yes, it is. But if you take your 30% federal tax credit that's available, that's a $4,000 actual cost difference in those two units. So with a $1,293 annual heating, cooling, hot water cost versus $3,369, that's a $2,076 annual operating cost difference. The return on that really expensive $20,000 Geo unit is less than 24 months. So, I mean, if you can return and put, and to refer back to our house, we heat and cool approximately 3,000 square feet, and our monthly bill, heating, highest bill has been $180, and cooling we run about $105, $110. I also have 3 children and a wife that the light switch has one way. So keeping all this in mind and everything we've discussed tonight, I think you have to really view your house as a total package. If you were building a new home or putting this in an existing home, you need to evaluate your insulation all the way down to as easy as the light bulbs that you run in your fixtures. You know, you can replace a 60-watt incandescent bulb with an 11-watt fluorescent. Might not be the prettiest light bulb, but if you're putting money back in your pocket, you can kind of deal with that. Now they have LED light bulbs that are out. They're $7, $8, $10 a piece. It's kind of expensive, but if you do the math on the kilowatt usage of them, it's a really good return. I guess what I'm trying to say, bundle your insulation, your heating and air, and your light bulbs. That's all things that you can do in an existing home to really, really cut down on your carbon footprint. So that's why we chose that route.
Thank you, Wesley, and thank you, all 3 of you. This is fascinating. I'm learning a whole lot.